Welcome to Crime Stoppers. I'm your host, Chip Brown. Heartland Crime Stoppers is a community-based program designed to help law enforcement solve crimes by setting up a system which allows the public to phone in tips anonymously and receive cash rewards for information that leads to an arrest, the recovery of stolen property, or the recovery of illegal drugs. Heartland Crime Stoppers is funded through the Florida Crime Stoppers Trust Fund and through donations from the community. Citizens and local businesses make Crime Stoppers work. On today's show, we'll talk with Haines City Police Chief Jim Elensky about his vision for the future of the Haines City Police Department. Starting the show will be a 30-year veteran of law enforcement, Joe Hall, who is the police chief of the Bartow Police Department. Chief Hall has been the chief of police in Bartow since 2009. The Bartow Police Department prides itself on the ability to provide police services with pride and integrity, keeping that home-time personal atmosphere. Chief Hall, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Now, interestingly, 3 years ago when we first started our Crime Stoppers show, you were our first guest.
That's right, yeah. Yep, you're right.
It hasn't seemed like it's been that long, but it's been 3 years. So.
Time flies, yep. A lot's changed in 3 years, too.
Yeah, it has indeed, indeed. Now, kind of go over some old stuff. You actually retired from the Panama City Police Department before you came to Bartow.
Yep, that's right. I spent right at about 27 years with the Panama City Police Department, the Bay County Sheriff's Office, before I retired. And I took the helm here in Bartow in July of 2009.
Like you say, you talked about just in the last 3 years, but since, basically, 8 years ago, a lot has indeed changed. And you started some new programs. I know that you've talked about wanting to put some emphasis on some crime prevention and other things. So. Yeah,
that's true. In 2009, when I got here, it was really, it was a change of times for the city of Bartow and the Bartow Police Department. The department had gone through a lot of changes itself. And when I came in, the focus was to identify what the issues really were in the city of Bartow. And as a result of that research and analysis that we did, we learned that essentially our biggest problem in Bartow was our property crime rate. So we began to formulate some sort of a plan to attack the property crime. Violent crime was essentially non-existent, and I say non-existent because we had less than 2 or 3 a year, but because our property crime rate was at a level that was uncomfortable for the citizens and the police department, that's what we kind of focused on. The end result of that program end result of that analysis was that we started a new program called community policing in Bartow. We didn't have the money to start a new unit. We couldn't hire extra manpower. So it was going to be a challenge up front. We were going to take some folks off of the patrol section and put them into a new unit and start focusing on the problem and problem solutions rather than just arresting criminals and putting them in jail, and see if that wouldn't reduce our crime rate. It was a scary time, I'm going to tell you. Most of our supervisors, it's like, I don't know that we can do, with less people on patrol.
Any change is often scary once you started out.
It was a challenge. I'm going to say we probably went through 12 months of growing pains, but once we got it kicked off, once everyone, including myself, realized that the actual calls for service were going down by us dealing with these community issues on the forefront, I think, and now, even then and now, we essentially have seen very, very good progress to the point to where our crime rate today is 34% lower than it was in the late 80s in the city of Bartow.
That's quite a drop.
That's pretty substantial in my opinion. And we did that without hiring extra manpower. In fact, we cut manpower from patrol and put them in a different section. But even on top of that, once we got the ball rolling to work on that crime rate, work on that property crime rate, we really wanted to move into other facets in the city of Bartow to get that rate even lower and lower and lower. So we created other programs as well. A community outreach program. We embarked a little bit on the social media so to get information out to the public quicker through Facebook, through Twitter. We beefed up our neighborhood watch programs. 100% of our car burglars in the city every single year was a result of unsecured property. So there was an educational format that we put out there, and I think it's working pretty good.
So many of us, including myself growing up, we used to leave the keys in the car and not even lock the house doors.
And I think that's the issue here in Bartow as well. You know, it's a small town atmosphere with a lot of, well, the population during the week, let me say this, the population during the week swells in Bartow probably 35 or 40,000. Our nighttime population is only 19,000 people with 52 square miles of city. And but Monday through Friday, with the courthouse and all the government offices in Polk County being here, and this being the county seat, you know, we're policing 40,000 people Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And most residents, let's say, or you know, 3 and 4 generations deep, you know, are used to that small town atmosphere, and it just does. It's not on the forefront of your thought that you need to take your keys out, lock your door, roll your windows up, things like that. The educational component that we put into place to try to reduce the crime rate without putting extra police on the street, I think was probably one of the biggest keys that we've had to reducing that crime rate. Now, you know, here we are at the end of the year again this year. It'll be time for another report, and I feel pretty confident that we'll see another reduction in crime.
Yeah, that's always good when you can enact programs that actually help and make a difference, you know, and I'm sure that your officers, seeing the success of the community policing, you probably have, everybody is doing it now, basically.
Yeah, the whole department is, and that's a very good point. You know, from that little 3-man team that we put together initially 3 years ago, actually 4 years ago now, to start the program out, we've increased it throughout the whole department. And what that means for us is, you know, traditional policing anyway for a municipal police department, I'm not going to say law enforcement as a whole, but for a municipal police department the size of ours, you know, you have X amount of patrol officers on the street, they have zones assigned to them, and they patrol the street, and, you know, the overall goal is crime prevention. Most people think of the police department as, you know, they ride around and look for people committing crimes, and they put the bad guy in jail, but our initial goal is to prevent crime before they even happen. So we got into the traditional policing format where we have 6 zones in the city, we have 6 patrol officers out there, or 7, you know, however many is assigned to the shift, and that's what they were doing. Phase 2 of the community policing project for us was we did away with the traditional way of policing, and we went into an analysis form where we took one of our crime prevention officers and got them into analytics so that we could identify exactly where the crimes were happening in the city and where they were more prolific than other areas. And then we would just assign the entire patrol shift to those areas. I think that's been just as positive as the community policing effort, and we got the whole department involved. Phase 3 of that was taking the detectives out of a specialty assignment and assigning those to these community policing areas. So hopefully eventually over time, the residents are going to know the officers all by name, and they'll even know the detective that's going to be working their case if a crime were to occur in their neighborhood.
Yeah, that really gives it that personal police touch, if you will, you know, that, and just making good use of technology that's available that we didn't have 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember, you know, in Polk County, we're very fortunate here because we're all connected to the same system. Thanks to the Sheriff's Office foresight years ago with our new Tiburon system, we all have the benefit of the same computer system. We can share data across city lines, county lines, and identify the crime trends a lot faster than we could 10 years ago.
Exactly. Now, one of the things I know that you have started recently is the Chief's Chat. Tell us what that is.
Yeah, well, that was a phase of the community policing project that we implemented some time ago. We really needed, or I needed an avenue, the officers needed an avenue, that they wanted to be able to meet with the residents one-on-one at certain times and discuss what's going on in the department, what's going on with the city, and what the crime trends are, and what help do we need at the police department. So we started Chief's Chat. The first Tuesday of each month, short of a holiday, we'll meet at a different restaurant for breakfast, and it's very informal. I'm usually there by about 7:15 in the morning. We'll have coffee. If you want to have breakfast, have breakfast. If you want to do nothing but just talk about the football game the night before, I'm available for that too. But what it's transpired into in the last year and a half is our residents show up and they want to talk about specific issues in their little section of the city or their street and what can be done, if anything, to correct these issues. 98% of the time, it's not even crime related, believe it or not. It's just issues that disrupt that neighborhood.
Quality of life issues.
Quality of life issues is the perfect way to put it. And I'll have the community police team there with me, and we take note of those issues and try to correct those problems. It's been a big success. Next year I think we may try to do a little bit different. It's breakfast now. We've had some comments that some folks can't make it to that and then go to work. We may try a nighttime meeting and see how that works next year.
Well, again, just reacting to the trends that's in your community. That's you have to be flexible.
Yeah, and I probably told this story last time, but what keeps coming to the forefront of my mind is I will never forget in the early 90s when in Florida we were dealing with the crack cocaine epidemic. The federal government came out with all this grant money to get law enforcement agencies back into a community policing philosophy. And one of the issues that we dealt with in Panama City that I directly had to deal with on a daily basis was a huge drug issue in one section of Panama City. And every night we had 25 police officers out there in drug units and everybody out there working drugs, 7 days a week, and nothing was ever changing. The chief at the time suggested that we have a town hall meeting and have the residents tell us what they think the problem is, and let's try to find a solution rather than just put everybody in jail. I mean, obviously this is not working. And we did have a town hall meeting, and believe it or not, what the residents came to was the drugs were not the biggest issue. They had another concern that they thought was the biggest issue. So we took the officers off the street, dealt with the problem at hand, and the problem went away by itself, which is kind of the philosophy that we took here. Now, don't get me wrong, I mean, law enforcement officers will never be able to get away from enforcing the law, enforcing speeding, and whatever else may come up. But sometimes dealing with the symptoms is not the best cure for the overall problem. You got to find out what the original problem is, and that's kind of the philosophy we're trying to change to here.
Well, Chief, thank you for all the stuff you've been doing here in Bartow, and I'm seeing some great success, and I'm sure the next year or so be able to hear more about what the crime rate is even dropping lower.
I hope so. Thank you, Chip.
We're going to take a break for a few minutes and take a look at our most recent unsolved cases.
At approximately 12:35 a.m. on Thursday, November 23, 2017, a retail theft occurred at the Circle K located at 8324 Highway 98 North in Lakeland. An unknown white male wearing a North Carolina Tar Heels hoodie, sweatpants, and dark-colored shoes entered the business on the above date and time. The suspect removed a bottle of Livingston Chardonnay from the business without paying for the merchandise. The suspect fled the business on foot, heading west on Banana Road. Lakeland police need to identify this suspect of a theft that occurred within the city limits of Lakeland, Florida. At approximately 1:17 p.m. on Thursday, November 30th, 2017, an unknown black male and unknown black female entered the Publix liquor store located at 6767 U.S. Highway 98 North in Lakeland and removed several bottles of liquor without paying. The black male is described as being 20 to 30 years of age with a thin build, wearing a long-sleeved red shirt and tan pants. Black female is described as being 20 to 30 years of age, wearing black leggings, a long-sleeved black pullover with a multicolored horizontal stripe, and a black hair cap. Both suspects fled in a red 2008 Nissan Titan, which was reported as stolen out of Orlando. The Bartow Police Department is seeking help from the public to identify this thief shown on video surveillance stealing a laptop while at the Bartow Public Library. On Monday, November 13, 2017, at approximately 10:53, the victim left his gray Toshiba laptop unsecured on a desk. Upon returning, he discovered the laptop was missing. The suspect exited the library, traveling south on foot. He returned to his bicycle and then left the scene and headed north. Lakeland police need to locate Dorian Black Del Moral. Del Moral has an active warrant for armed robbery with a firearm for an incident that occurred on October 26, 2017 at a convenience store near I-4 and Florida Avenue. Del Moral should be considered armed and dangerous. If you come into contact with Del Moral, do not approach him. Polk County Sheriff's detectives are seeking information about the theft of 3 UTVs that were stolen between December 15th and December 20th, 2017 from Pebbledale Farm located at 3393 Cruise Lake Road in Lakeland. a 2013 Kubota 900 series camouflage UTV with number 203 on the front hood in block numerals. It also has blue circular Parksdale Farm stickers next to the numbers. A 2017 Kubota 900 series orange UTV with number 264 on the hood. This UTV is equipped with a custom-made front-mounted herbicide sprayer. A 2015 John Deere Gator dark green with number 205 on the hood. This UTV is equipped with a rear-mounted herbicide sprayer. The subject pictured above has been identified as Leanthony Deshawn Davis. An arrest warrant has been obtained for robbery with a weapon stemming from an incident on December 18, 2017. His last known address was in Winter Haven. On December 10th and December 17th, around 9:45 p.m., this suspect robbed two different dollar-type stores wearing the same outfit, carrying the same gun and backpack. The suspect is described as 6 foot tall, 250 to 300 pounds, and can be seen here in video surveillance photos.
If you have any information on any of the cases you've just seen, or any information on an unsolved crime, please contact Heartland Crime Stoppers and leave an anonymous tip. The toll-free tip line is 1-800-226-TIPS. That's 8477. You can also leave an anonymous web tip by going to www.heartlandcrimestoppers.com and click on the Give a Tip tab, or by going to www.p3tips.com. Don't forget, you can download our free P3 Tips app on your smart device. Whichever way you choose to leave a tip, you will remain 100% anonymous. If your tip results in an arrest, the recovery of stolen property, or the recovery of illegal drugs, you could be eligible for a cash reward of up to $3,000.
Welcome back to Crime Stoppers. I'm your host, Chip Brown. Our next guest is Chief Jim Elensky from the Haines City Police Department. Chief Elensky has 30 years of experience in law enforcement and was recently appointed as the Chief of Police in Haines City. Chief Elensky, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Now tell us how you ended up from upstate New York here in Florida.
Well, I was born and raised in Buffalo. 50 years old now, so time goes by pretty fast. But what I did up there is I enjoyed flying. So my mother actually wanted me to get into aviation. We had an uncle that flew for one of the major airlines. And so early on, she got me into the aviation world. It seemed pretty simple to me. So at 15, I started taking flying lessons, and what the instructors called me was a natural, but it didn't seem difficult. So at age 16, the minimum age allowed by the FAA, I soloed and got my pilot's license at age 17, minimum age as well, and worked on my commercial pilot's license that I finished up at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach. So the interesting part about all that is my graduation at high school up there in Buffalo, I ended up not making it because I was flying business trips.
That's amazing. You know, most folks usually want to go to their high school graduation to see their friends and to get that piece of paper, and
right.
You're out flying, being
I was
paid to
out
fly.
Flying, being paid to fly. So when they called and said we had a trip, I said, wow, that's a bad day for me to be flying, but the money ruled.
Exactly. So now you first came to Florida and you worked over in Pinellas County.
Correct.
Before you came over here to Polk. So tell us about that transition.
Right. I had a friend that was a Pinellas County road deputy, if you will, and I hooked up with him. So he said, hey, you can stay here for free. Obviously, you got to pay for your own airline ticket. So I applied for the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. They were not interested in putting a 20-year-old on the road, but they were interested in me working in the detention side. So ultimately, I got hired to work in detention for the Pinellas Sheriff's Office. I did that about a year, and you know, my dream was to get on the road. So Polk County hired me on the road, and I've been there ever since. I went to Haines City, actually. So that was a great experience working in the jail, because at that time I weighed about 150 pounds, 5'9", and I thought I was it to law enforcement and wearing a badge, and You learn real quick in the jail how to talk to people, otherwise you get beat down.
I've had several of the police chiefs that I've interviewed that started their career in the jail, and they even recommend, for young deputies to start in the jail, because
Right.
it really teaches you how to talk to people, because
Right.
that's your biggest asset on the road or anywhere, is how you talk and interact with people.
Right. Talk to them, and the big thing today is de-escalation. Little did we know back in 1988 when I started, I learned how to de-escalate real quick.
Yeah, it's an art, if you will. We've all seen the people that don't do too well at that.
Right.
And certainly in today's society, the more problems you can avoid, you don't want to cause anything to go
Right.
south
Right.
as you can.
You don't want a problem that you arrive at to just get worse because you don't know how to talk to folks.
Exactly. Now, when you came to Polk County, you weren't interested in flying. You didn't come. Your goal wasn't to be a pilot, was
Right.
it?
My goal was to be on the road, so that's the goal I achieved initially, and then it was the Polk Sheriff's Office that really took notice of the commercial pilot multi-engine instrument rated license that I had, and a couple of years after I was on the road, I was asked to fly one of the twin engines that they had, and typically that was used to fly the Board of County Commission around, a lot of times going to Tallahassee for obvious reasons, and then we would fly law enforcement around the state and the southeastern United States to go to serious cases. So I did a lot of that on a part-time basis while I was a deputy sheriff.
Now, I know I had a chance to look at the strategic plan that Haines City Police Department came up with.
Right.
That's not an easy thing to come up with. It's not just a bunch of people sitting around throwing out ideas. There was an actual dedicated, drawn-out, in-depth process that you went to get to this plan. So
Right.
Tell us about that.
Well, first and foremost, I have to thank my predecessor, Gary Hester, for bringing that idea to the table. And then Dr. Jim Sewell, retired from FDLE, for facilitating it. So basically, once we got involved in the strategic plan, because prior to the strategic plan, they looked at goals every year, see if they could achieve that goal for the year. And if you don't have an extended plan in today's world, you're really not getting anywhere. You're not moving forward. So this strategic plan brought in community members, brought in officers. You had command staff involved at various levels. So typically you weren't all in the same room at the same time, except at the very end. And then we tweaked it at the very end. And the strategic plan really is, there's some things there that lessons learned that the community made very clear to us that we were lacking, and we are lacking. For example, we don't have a dedicated crime analyst. I'm working on that now with crime scene. So one of our persons there have taken the lead to be a crime analyst. We need that. Intelligence-led policing, it's kind of old school now, but it hasn't been used very much in the city of Haines City. It is now. So a couple other things that we're looking at is staffing issues, moving people around. I don't need officers coming in at 5:30 in the morning. I need them from 11 in the morning till in the evening. So we're changing staffing, and then we're looking at crime suppression techniques. So there's a lot that's going on, and probably one of the biggest things is social media. Today, social media is paramount. It's very critical to get information out, get feedback from the citizens on crimes and other problems. So I now have a Twitter account, and we've already had a Facebook account up and running, but in order to stay connected, it's important that we're on top of social media.
Yeah, the social media, and we've talked to with other chiefs before, it's just has basically taken over our world, if you will. 'Cause
Right.
there's so much immediate information, and what the news media doesn't pick up on, somebody on Twitter or on Facebook, and before typically the officers can get to a scene, it's
Right.
out in the community.
Right. One thing I've noticed since I started Twitter is the media will start calling me. So they may or may not want to make a story out of something. Typically they do, so I even get more coverage at that point. So it's very important, but one of the critical elements of the strategic plan is we also have some elderly folks there that really don't care about technology today, And quite frankly, I don't blame some of them. So it's important that we reach out to them as well. So there's other techniques we have to use to make sure they're informed.
Yeah, and no matter how you get it out, it's still that communication between you and the community and the city commission, and it's a constant flow back and forth. And
Right.
when that flow gets bottled up, you see the results of
Oh,
that.
sure, sure. And I feel like as the chief, it's my responsibility to make sure people are informed. And as you and I both know, probably 85% social media all the way. You just have that lacking 15% you need to reach a different way.
Now, I know one of the things when you had involved the community in this process, and I was reading through the plan,
Right.
they actually critiqued the department of what they liked, what they didn't like, their weaknesses, their strengths, and that can be a pretty sharp knife sometimes.
Right. It's a fact finder, if you will. So one of the things I believe we're lacking after looking at some comments and getting some citizen feedback is the lack of community policing, the philosophy as an entire police department. So moving forward, starting in January, I expect everybody to embrace community policing, not just the community policing officers. So, you know, back in the old days, you had your windows down because you didn't have AC, and you didn't have your stereo on because you didn't have one. And in today's world, everybody's got their windows up, they're tinted, and I'm talking about police officers, and their stereos on. So they need to get back to old school ways of communicating with citizens, getting out of their patrol cars, having the window down in the summertime, and turn the radio off other than their police radio.
Now, Chief, when you came to Polk County, you did not have a college degree, is that correct?
That's correct. I had the commercial pilot's license, which was great, but I did not have a college degree, and in order to get promoted to sergeant, I could already see the tide changing, where college was very important. So basically, it was encouraged that you get a 2-year degree to make the rank of sergeant, so I started working on my degree. Now, I did initially take the path of least resistance. So with my commercial pilot's license, I was halfway to a 2-year degree, technically. So I started with Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and I continued with them all the way through my bachelor's. Now, keeping in mind I was working full-time, so I couldn't go to Daytona Beach every day, and that's when the online classes were just starting to come out. So the challenge was when you had to take a test, you couldn't do that online. You had to go to MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa. So that's how I did my bachelor's degree. It was with Embry-Riddle Professional Aeronautics, and I did my master's degree at Warner University in management.
Yeah, so many people say, well, I'm working, I don't have time to go to school, I don't need to go to school. But with you getting a pilot's license so young, you really have a inner drive that you can, I guess, stay pretty focused.
Right, right. And actually, you know, I worked on my master's degree while I was in charge of criminal investigations for the sheriff's office. So I was 24/7 at the sheriff's office and working on my master's degree in between. And quite frankly, the professors didn't care what kind of job you had. Your schoolwork had to get done.
Yeah. Well, obviously it worked out well for you because you were able to retire from the sheriff's office as a captain. So
Right.
A very good career for you, and it looks at serving you well in Haines City, and looking forward to seeing the new steps that Haines City is going into.
Right. I'm looking forward to it as well. So.
That's going to do it for this edition of Crime Stoppers. Keep in mind, Heartland Crime Stoppers is an organization that helps law enforcement solve crimes through anonymous tips and monetary rewards. It encourages a cooperative partnership between law enforcement, the media, and the community to ensure security and enhance our quality of life here in Polk County. For more information, you can check us out on the web at heartlandcrimestoppers.com or follow us on Facebook at Heartland Crime Stoppers Florida. Until next time, keep in mind, it's a crime, and you can help make sure that they don't get away with it.